Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome, Daniel.
Welcome. Thank you.
I'm sitting here with Daniel Herman. So, my friend Izzy Chabusha introduced me to you a while ago, maybe 6+ months ago, and said that you'd be interested in building a sweat lodge at the House of More. He has a friend who's interested in building a sweat lodge at the House of More. I said, well, I'm interested in having a sweat lodge at the House of More. So
Thank you, yeah.
A match was made. And originally, when you started with the sweat lodges, you were bringing Native Americans from various tribes. And over time, I think we both came to the conclusion that it would be best if the ceremonies were led by a Jew. Led in a Jewish way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Native Americans have their way, but some of their beliefs possibly could be inconsistent with various aspects of Judaism. So we came to that decision pretty much at the same time. And today, the regular sweat lodge ceremonies,
Yes,
led by you at the House of More. Beautiful.
yes.
In addition to that, we've also met a couple of times at Adama.
Yes.
I think you've been there twice.
Twice and once on the
One
Dhamma
day.
experience, yeah.
Okay. So a three-peat.
Yes.
Okay. So beautiful. So we've met a few times, and I think it'll be an honor for people. It's an honor for me to have you here.
Thank you.
And understanding some of the story which you're going to be sharing, and some of it which I'm sure I don't know. And also, I think for the audience here, it's an honor for them as well. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump right in. Let's start talking about sweats. Let's talk about the sweat lodge ceremony, what it means to you, how you got into it, and now you're facilitating them.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
So, actually, it's been a year almost. This November will be actually a year at the House of More.
Oh, really?
And
Oh.
yeah. And the end of November. And how I came to be with the sweat lodges, it was in Canada. I was in Canada just a few months before that. And
You were living in Canada before you came here.
I was living in Canada, but at the time I was actually, I'm on a business visa here. So I was back in Canada for the summer, right before November. And I met a client that has native relations, like he's related to a Native American woman, and his wife, and I told him, I shared with him about my healing journey, about my experiences with medicine and different things, plant medicines.
At that point,
And
you're already in.
I was already in, and I asked him, we spoke about it, and basically we got to a point where he's like, why don't you come to a sweat? I said, let's do it. So that was around, I think that was around July. And I started going to the Anishinaabe tribe, which is in Sweetwater. It's about an hour drive north of Toronto. And it's the Indian reserves there. And we started doing sweats, and I really got involved with it. I really loved it. And it got to a point where I said, well, I'm doing this really often, July, August, September, October. And I said, let's
So you kept doing them?
I kept doing them consistently and going almost every week or every other week. And I said, and I built a very close connection with these two native elders. One is from the Anishinaabe tribe, one is from the Mohawk tribe. And we said, let's bring it down to Miami. And in November, I met you sometimes I think it was October, November, and then we decided we're gonna start the sweats. And the reason why I connected so much with this healing modality, because I connect to there's many different modalities that I enjoy, but this is not a plant medicine process, and it's much more, it's practical in the sense of like hard work. It's a physical manifestation at the process. It's very demanding in the moment, and it's not psychedelic, so it's more being present with it. And the space, the darkness, the confined space is actually a place where I'm very comfortable in being in. I'm very comfortable in being in that dark space where you can express your voice without limitation, because that's where I've had my share of childhood. It was very in a kind of in the shadows and darkness for me. So
it's familiar in some way for you.
very familiar.
Oh,
so
interesting.
for me, it's like when I go in there, what's there? This is the safest place I could be in, and there's nothing that I can feel fearful from or intimidated from, because this is my home. This is my space. That darkness, and it's not darkness in the sense of like, it's the physical aspect of it is darkness, but there's much light for me in it.
Right.
And something to take note of for me is also the awareness that I got in the last few sweats that I've done, is that I noticed that I'm very, very expressive with my singing. I can sing very well. And my wife tells me, you sing beautifully. Why don't you just not sing in the sweat lodge, sing outside? And I realized that outside I can't. And when it's seeing others or sharing with others in that sense, it's hard for me. And I realized that in the darkness, it's a place of comfort, and I can share. So that's something that I take from also.
Well, here you got the bright lights on you.
Yeah.
It doesn't show on the cameras, but we got a couple of bright lights right on top of our heads.
Yes.
So, okay.
And
hence the nerves.
Yeah, hence the nerves. But it's good. It's it's awareness for me, and I learned through a person that I met on the Adama retreats, Rush, how to learn to express voice and how to not dismiss by expressing your voice. And that even amplified even more going into the sweat lodges. I'm like, I need to share my voice. I need to share my voice not only for myself, I need to share my voice for everybody to hear that we're safe, you're safe. Being in this space, everything is safe. And that even caused me to even open up even more and be able to feel comfortable and to share and to give everybody else the chance to feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned Rosh Lowe, who comes at Dhamma retreats. He's the one who taught me to speak publicly. Years ago, I trained with him. And now he's been doing regular events at the House of More, which is nice. For those in these parts of this neck of the woods, it's worthwhile to work with him.
Oh, yes, for sure. Rush, I did a Torah inauguration at the House of More recently, and I used Rush for the speech, for the preparation. We went very deep into what the speech should be and what it could be, and I ended up saying a whole different speech because it was the right moment, it was the right time. I didn't want to affect this situation in a different way, because what I was going to bring out was going to be way more than what I shared. But I felt like this was meant, whatever was meant to happen in that happened, and it was amazing. And what Rush really teaches me how to bring that out. But there's a point that needs to be shared with everybody. Needs to learn to share and not to dismiss their traumas, to dismiss their neglect that they felt, or to go right into it, abuse, and to really say, it's okay, I'm a victim, or it's okay, I can share, it's okay, I can be heard, it's okay, I don't have to feel judged, I don't have to feel criticized. And it's for me, it's for myself. I need to give myself that unconditional love and acceptance that I can share. And whatever happens next is not up to us. It's just the word needs to get out there, and the way it will happen, it will happen. So it's been, with the Adama retreats, and with Rush, it's been making that happen. It's like not dismissing, because there is all kinds of things we can share, and there's all kinds of things we could choose not to share. But where are we healing if we're not sharing what needs to be shared, and we're hiding it aside, or we're putting it under the rug? So
you're saying creating opportunities to share.
Creating opportunities to share.
And you get those with Rosh, you get those in a sweat lodge, and you're getting that here this evening.
Yes, definitely. And that's the intention of the sweat lodges for me, is to have people open up, and it's beautiful to see when that happens. And it's hard to see when it doesn't. I see people coming in, and they're holding back a lot. They're holding back a lot, and I want to get them to a place where it's safe. Everything's okay. You can share. There's nothing. It's the space is here, and it's safe here, and it's safe everywhere. And but that's the intention of the sweat lodge, is to give myself that recognition of not being dismissive, and to give everybody else the same thing, to learn to create, like basically creating a container for expressing. And from there we can take it on to our life. I can speak up when I need to speak up. I can talk when I feel like this is wrong, or this was done wrong to me, or this is not okay. I'm a victim of this. I'm a victim of abuse in different ways. I've experienced in my life physical abuse. I experienced in my life sexual abuse, mental, verbal abuse, and it's okay. It's okay to share that. People need to know these things, and people need to feel safe that there is a word out there, and
Why do people need to know these things?
Because people need to know that when the victim aspect happens, when that program that we did not want, and that what happened is not a part of us, by them sharing it, they basically shed away the limiting beliefs that this is who they are, or this is what happened to me, maybe I deserve it, or maybe this is what happened to me and I need to live with it without sharing it. So there's a point where there's a point where I decided in my life that I don't want to be a victim anymore. And part of addiction is realizing that we're not victims, and that we have a role, we have a responsibility, and we have control over what of these things, basically, to get to a point where to realize we're not victims. We need to share, we need to express, and from there, that's a healthy, basically a way of a healthy boundary, to create a healthy expressive boundary, to say, this is me, this is my container, this is my safe space, I need to share that out there, and I'm not letting anything else in that will create any damage with that.
Understood. Okay. I want to get to your story. Before we do, I just want to give two definitions, maybe for some people who are hearing us talk about subjects. Who knows who ends up listening to this. But we spoke about the House of More, and we spoke about Sweat Lodge, and we kind of jumped right in. So I'll give a brief explanation of both, and then we'll go to your story. So the House of More is a location in Florida, about 30, 40 minutes outside of Miami. It's a house that's been committed to healing. This is what the house is designated for. And we'll have retreats. We often have evenings and workshops and retreats, and recently started a shul. And in your case, you made a Sefer Torah there. There was Shui Goldstein made a bris there. So it's a home that's really a community home, not far from where I live, where we use it for all sorts of healing events. One of those is a sweat lodge, which you lead. We also have a maloka there where we do other kind of breathwork ceremonies. We have cold plunges there, many things. So, and God willing, more and more people will begin to use the home in the way you do, to say, hey, this is my home base for the healing work that I do. And we have a number of facilitators already doing that, and God willing, more and more will come and use this space as a space for themselves, and also to inspire others in other communities, because healing is necessary for us, and all of us need it. And to have a place that's designated for it allows for it to happen a lot more, and also builds a very strong community around it. Now, in terms of sweat lodges is an ancient schwitz, so to speak. The Native American culture and some others use it as a healing ceremony of sorts. And it's in darkness, and it's in a constricted small space, and it's also with heat. And between those experiences, having to deal with sitting in an uncomfortable posture, sitting in a very dark space, sitting in real heat, it gives an opportunity to come to certain realizations, or connect to the people there, or connect to oneself. Besides for, of course, the physical benefits of being in heat, sweating out, just like exists in a sauna, but it's much, much deeper than just a sauna. So I thought to explain those. And now let's go in. Tell us where you grew up. Tell us where you were born.
Sure. So I grew up in Tzfat, 1990. That's when I was born. And I was born to a family of Balei Tshuva, people that became religious.
Chabad family?
Became Chabad. My father and my mother are both from Russia, from Kafkaz, the Kafkaz Mountains. We know, for people that know a little bit of the demographics of Russia, this is the province of Chechnya. And in Chechnya, there is a place called Grozny. And in Grozny, there is the Kafkazi community and the Kafkazi mountains, in the Kafkaz mountains. So basically, that's where my parents are from. Interesting that my mother and my father actually are kind of related. My father is my mother's great uncle. So they share his mother and my mother are, his mother and my mother's grandmother are sisters. They moved, basically he moved to Tzfat in the 70s, and my mother met him later on in the 80s. She was a professor in Moscow at the University of Moscow. She moved there, and that's how they met. In the 90s, they had me. In the 80s and then 90s, they had me.
You're the oldest child?
I'm the oldest child out of four.
Boys, girls?
We were three boys and one girl. My father was a painter, was an artist, one of the founders of the artist colony in Tzfat. His technique was oil paintings, and he painted the landscapes of Tzfat, and he actually traveled around the world, New York, Paris, and London, and did different art exhibitions and painted different landscapes. And my father was addicted to alcohol and drugs. And my father passed away in 1996 from a drug overdose on Isu Chag of Pesach, on the last day of Pesach. And he died from a heroin overdose. That was 1996. I lost my brother during COVID in Canada to fentanyl overdose. My brother and my father shared very similar life hardships and very similar physical appearances and body language. And
Did they pass out around the same age?
no, my brother was 29 years old when he passed away. He was 11 months apart from me, and my father passed away at the age of 47 or 48 from drug overdose. So they both had the serious addiction of drugs. My brother was very close to me. I was only 6 years old when I lost my father, but I remember him. I remember more negative things than positive. Try to remember the positive. It's still a process.
What are some of the negative and some of the positive?
So the negatives are physical abuse, very violent physical abuse.
Of you, your mother?
Of me.
Okay.
And my siblings, not my mother. He loved her enough to, I guess, not to abuse her. There's one of the hardest memories I had as a child, and the reason why I'm sharing this before I go into this memory is to really own those memories, and to really, because a part of processing something like this, and grief and resentment, and is to go to a point where how do we clear that trauma, or how do we learn to start clearing a trauma, because that takes a long time. But the first part is actually expressing it and sharing it and having it there to see, and then once it's there to see, is to learn how to navigate from that and continue on, because until we face it, it's going to stay there. So that memory basically was a Sabbath. It was a lunch. My father decided that he wanted to be very aggressive on that day. He wanted us to eat, and as you know, kids on a Sabbath, they can't even go past the bread meal. And my mother used to make a lot of different types of food. So at a point, my father said in Russian to me, he said, "You're gonna eat?" And I said, "No, I don't want to eat." Like, I was like nervous from him and scared, and I wasn't hungry also. So he picked me up and took me to the bedroom floor, and in the way, I remember being so scared that, because the way he was holding me so strong, I ended up peeing myself. Then when he got me to the bedroom floor, he threw me against the wall and I fell on the bed. a few hours later, I think on that day, he called me in Russian. He said, "Come here." And there was a landing and like at the top of the stairs in the bedroom floor, and he told me, "You ready to eat?" And I'm standing right there next to him. And I said, "Oh, I'm not ready to eat. I'm not hungry," and I'm shaking. He picked me up, held me from my neck, from the shirt in my neck, and from my pants, and threw me down the stairs. It was 12 flights of stairs into a fridge. So once that happened, I busted my face. Basically, he busted my face, and my mother was yelling at him in Russian. "Oh, how can you do this? He's a little child." And that was a very harsh memory for me. A lot of things stem from this specific memory, and positive. There was many more things. There was violent outbursts and different things that were happening around the house. The reason why I shared about the sweat lodge, living in the dark, is because my childhood, I can portray it and express it in a way of, express the portrayal of it in the sense of like being in the shadow. It's like being against the wall in the shadow. It's like I'm comfortable here, because if I step in the light, if I step in the physical light, there will be harm. Something is going to come and attack me from somewhere. And it was that's the take on the sweat lodge. That's why I'm comfortable there. But going back to my father, there was many different things, different times. My father was very charismatic. He was very, he was everybody knew him and everybody feared him. And in the Chabad community, he was a person that people came to learn Chassidut from. Like I spoke to some big Rabbanim in Tzfat, big shluchim, and the ones that I speak with, they're telling me of the other ones that are bigger than them that came to learn from him, because he was so sharp with knowledge and so sharp in understanding Kabbalah and this mystical terms that are so hard to understand. He was able to make people just sit there and just explain to them like he's explaining a child something. So that was the one thing about my father that I've learned, later, that's how he was. As a child, I remember his joking humor. And I have that. I have those moments where I use this humor, or I'm able to socialize or connect with people through that type of behavior and make people even feel safe by giving them this open type of approach. And that's one thing I took from my father. And then I realized I'm also very, very big into charitable work or helping others, monetary or voluntary, like volunteering and doing stuff like that. And
yes, you have a very generous spirit.
Yeah. So it's never about me. It's always about what everybody needs, and it's always about giving. And I realize that's from my father. And actually, a few people, when I went back to do a few moments of going back to the roots, as they call it, in Tzfat, people were telling me, sharing stories of how my father would paint art and give it away, sell it on the street, find somebody he would grab somebody from the street, sell it to them, fresh oil painting, and he would give the money to different people that needed it, or just disperse the money in between people that came around, needed money or whatever, and needed help. So I see that in myself, I see it in my kids, and it's one thing. It's one good major thing I can say about my father. And I could say 3-4 years ago, I wasn't there even to see the good. I was able to just see the not good. But I'm at a point where I'm able to see both, and I'm able to choose, this is what I'm taking with me, and this is what I'm leaving behind. Because I put that in front of me, and I decided to process it. I decided to use different healing modalities to go through it. And yeah.
Let's go back to the story before
Sure.
we go down this path, because I think it would be helpful to kind of hear where you went from there. So understanding the abuse, some of the positive and negative of your father. Eventually he dies from a drug overdose at 6 years old. What were you told as a 6-year-old? What was explained to you as to how your father passed away?
That basically the people that were close to him, the shluchim, Chabad emissaries, and friends, they said that he passed away because God needed to take him. Because the tzaddikim, they don't the righteous. The God wants them before He wants anybody else. So he came to take him early. That's how they saw it. And that's how I was taught, that's what happened.
How did that land for you when you heard it?
I thought it was, as a child, I thought it was, that's what it is. I wasn't.
You took it at face value.
Yeah, because
It didn't feel like a contradiction with some of the physical abuse and violent outburst experiences that you had.
Not as a child. Not in that mental, like a child, I don't think can comprehend that. Yeah.
So as you grew up, you had a positive association with your dad?
No, zero. No, it was not until I moved to Miami that I was even to do a yahrzeit for him in order to do a proper kaddish. Most years.
Were you angry or?
Angry. Yeah, definitely angry.
What were you angry about? If I met you 15 years ago, what were you? And I asked you about your dad, what would you have said?
That he was a violent monster, that there was no good to him, and that he just took life. He took everybody, like he just sucked life away from everything that was around him. And that cost me a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and a lot of, not only towards him, towards God, because I said, if that's what my father is, then who's God? God is probably the same. God is probably that violent, taking, abusing, and just taking and not giving anything. I didn't grow up in a nurturing environment that was comforting, safe, or loving in any way. So, growing up with that, it's, that was 15 years ago. That's what I would have told you. There's no, that he's just an evil, dark person, and the same thing goes with everything else.
Understood. Okay, so bring us back through your childhood after your father passed away.
So after my father passed away, as kids, we, losing my father, realizing today a lot of things is that we didn't feel safe. As kids, we didn't feel safe at home. The home was taken away from us. So as kids growing up, Tzfat is a place where...
It's not as if you felt safe before, I mean.
Yeah, it's not like I felt safe before. So now it's even more.
Not to minimize the loss, but I'm saying that the contrast wasn't unsafe to safe. It was always unsafe.
It was always unsafe. But it amplified even more, because what happens with abuse, and I learned a little bit about it, is even when the abuser is in the house, there's still some kind of the hitting or the verbal abuse or the neglect. That person is still present. So in a sense, it's still closure. You're still getting that hit. That means that, in a very dysfunctional, distorted way, it's showing you that this person cares about you because he's beating you. He's there. Right. At the end of the day, he's there. He's giving you that attention, and however that attention comes together. However, it's so once that person is out of the picture, now the abuser is not there, and now there's a lot of questions and there's no answers, and now I'm all alone. So, you go about your day, you go about your life, and so we as kids, we used to be roaming the streets a lot. In Tzfat, there's a lot of abandoned houses, a lot of places where you can go and as a kid just like search for things. So, and I remember we were always on outside and being, around strangers, feeling comfortable to associate with anybody and everybody, and not to be home. And that takes me to another place, which is that's the next step in my awareness and my, I was thinking, my father had an addiction to drugs. My brother had an addiction to drugs. Where did it manifest for me? And for many years, I had a dysfunctional relationship with sex. And, growing up in Tzfat, I was around strangers a lot, and this is something I'm going to share that I haven't even shared yet, but it's going to go out there basically, is that, I was doing a lot of processing around the other part of abuse, which I mentioned earlier, which is sexual abuse. And it was very hard for me to pinpoint because, listening to people share about abuse, it's very hard to get to a point where it's like I see their timeline, I see their share, I see what they went through, and I see their experience. Now I need to get closure with it, and how do I express myself through their story, right? So what we do is we hear somebody else's story, and then we feel like, okay, now I feel safe, I can share my story. And for me there's a point in time where everything's dark. So if I need to share my sexual abuse, that what I went through, and I can put a point in time on it. I can put a memory to it. I can put a present memory, and I'm going to get to it, a conscious memory, and it's all dark, and it's very hard. And going back to the strangers that's fought, to the abandoned houses, to meeting strangers and feeling comfortable. I've been doing a lot of work with a therapist who's very, very experienced and been doing this for 40 years. And he's in his 80s, a very learned person. And basically we got to a point in our process that we kind of start searching around. Instead of going inside and trying to find the memory, we went outside and tried to see the sceneries, see the landscapes, see the people, the timeline, and build a timeline. When did this happen? How did this happen? How could it have happened if you feel that it did happen? So I put a timeline, and I put a place to it. And the strangers, the people that were around me, the people that were using around me, different types of drugs, different types of things, and realizing that
as a young child,
and realizing that what it goes back to is that there is no memory because I wasn't conscious in that time, and it's very hard.
Why were you so certain that you were sexually abused? Why did you go through these lenses to search for it?
Because what I did with myself and my healing journey is that I'm going straight to the root, and there's many things when we go straight to the roots. It's like you're going through a forest and you want to get to the center of the place, and there's a lot of trees, a lot of things are in the way. There's a lot of blockages, and many things are gonna. So for me, I felt like this, connects to me with the search for more. Basically, it's like I can't be still. My entire life I'm restless. I'm very restless, and I'm very at unease. Like I'm not at rest. I can't find the answer. I'm always searching, and it's taking a toll on me. It's taking a toll on my mental health. It took a toll on my sleeping. My sleeping got to a point where I was like sleep deprived, like going into sleep and not having a full sleep. So I can actually be sleeping, but not reaching REM, which is like the deepest part of sleep, and then having sleep apnea, and resentments, and with my therapist, with my hypnotherapist, and different modalities that I use, we came to this conclusion that not only that this happened, it happened. It's my behavior, my symptoms of behavior, the way I present myself, the way I tend to lose concentration in conversations, the way I tend to avoid certain things, having fears for certain things, addiction, in that regard. Everything, I was kind of searching. This is, I'm labeling everything I see as I go, and then I'm trying to find the root cause behind it, And it came to a point where I went to a few plant medicine journeys, and the best plant medicine that I found was ayahuasca, because ayahuasca was able to go into the deeper state of the subconscious and to really pull out these things. And what happened with that journey with ayahuasca, it took me to a place where I was being guided by a guide, and she told me, like, you're safe, you're okay, we're going to take it down to this route. And she showed me painful memories of sexual abuse. But these memories were not memories, they were experiences of pain. So it's like, I'm seeing this and it's not a memory that I can attach to, but it's pain. So I'm seeing a vision of pain, but it's not a memory. I'm not sure if it
Yeah, I'm
makes
not
sense.
sure I understand what that means. Yeah.
So basically, and it came to me a few times again and again, what it is that instead of seeing a clear memory, I'm seeing a painful experience, which means that I'm experiencing pain and I'm feeling it, but I cannot see. It's like a parable. It's like I'm seeing things as parables. I'm seeing things as not for what they are.
Okay, I understand. I understand what you're saying. You're saying it's clear through the experience that you lived through something that felt this way, but not necessarily this experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's another thing. It's called the attachment theory, and attachment theory came about in the 80s, and a psychotherapist came up with this theory, and basically it shows people that the way they're raised and the way they come to be as adults from childhood, they attach to the environment that they're in, they attach to the parents, to the caregivers. And if the caregiver is giving a safe place, a validating space, a loving place, then there's one attachment category that's labeled as that type of
A secure attachment.
a secure attachment. And then there's many different types of attachments. The one that right away, I literally went through a whole process of figuring out which attachment category I go to. And the one that that was the main one was the disorganized attachment category. And then this therapist actually goes into explain what the disorganized category is, and it goes to explain a story of a patient that went through sexual abuse and the manifestation of the disorganized attachment that came from that, and her symptoms later on in life. So I have all the symptoms, I have all the, whatever you want to call it, the criterias, but then I don't have the memory, which is very hard.
But with your story of losing your father at a young age, and I'm not sure at what point in time you got to working on this thing, but also losing your brother, and no doubt if your brother ended up that situation and you were close to him, no doubt it was a very tumultuous period from the time you were born until the period of time that you were sitting on the therapist's couch.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you feel the need to explore for the root or the source, or what could it be? I mean, you had a lot of explanation right in front of you. There was abuse, very
Right.
clear abuse. There was violent physical abuse. There was psychological abuse. There was the loss of your father. There was a drug addiction. There was,
Because
everything that comes with it.
the crazy aspect of it, that wasn't it. That was not the root of my problem. And as much that was apparent, there was something else that was more damaging than all of those things.
And that was?
And that was sexual abuse.
At this point in time, has a memory come clear?
And this point in time,
A memory, an individual, or I'm not asking for a name.
There isn't, and I will explain why. Because that memory is not there because I wasn't conscious. So basically, to say is that I went through abuse where I had to be drugged, or I had to be put in a state of mind that I cannot be aware to what's going on. And and that is, and because what I have the after. I have the after. I have memories of after. I have memories of something that came after, like whatever happened after the experience. But
Such as?
Basically getting up from a bed, going into a washroom, coming out of this washroom, and feeling in pain, or feeling violated, and feeling like distorted, confused, and that's where the hardest part is. The hardest part for people to share is that which is, so sometimes we can share the things that we know, the things that we see, the things that we
But to
felt
share the
in memory,
confusion.
and then to share the confusion, and then like, how am I going to be perceived on that level? Because that's already like on a deeper level of sharing. It's like, I went through all of that, but how am I going to be perceived when I share it and I can't give them a clear story?
Right. It's an interesting phenomenon, and I'm curious what it is, but I hear about it often, where someone is struggling in life, whether anxiety, depression, malaise, no energy, creating dysfunction in their lives, whether it's dysfunctional relationships or seeing that they hurt other people, and they want to be able to bring it back to something negative that happened in childhood or some massive event. Oh, because this happened at this time with this person in this place, therefore you are this way. And I wonder what that is. Is it for oneself? Does someone need that validation of their pain? Are they trying to validate their pain for themselves, or are they trying to validate their pain to someone else? Is there a third person that they feel they need to justify why they're in a difficult place? What's going on with that?
So for me, it's actually both. For me, it's validating myself by sharing with others and being validated by sharing. I feel like, for me, I have like this learning disability. If I hear somebody else speak, it's very hard for me to stay very focused. If I read the text that they're saying, I can understand what there's like. I can understand it better. So for me, expressing is actually validating myself. So if I say what it needs to be said, then I can go back and look at myself and say, okay, like now it's a clear answer. Like now everything's clear. So for other people it could be different. For example, I learn different texts. And when I learn these different texts, I actually ask the person who I'm learning with to be the one who's reading. Because if I'm reading, I'm able to understand it better than if I'm listening. And hearing it is hard for me. And it also stems from a lot of different things.
What's it? So you'll ask...
So I'll ask to read the text instead of somebody else giving over reading
Right.
the text.
But isn't that natural? I mean, I think anyone is able to concentrate better when they read themselves.
Depends who you ask. I have somebody I'm reading some texts with right now. So we're learning the book of Bitachon of Shara Bitachon.
Yeah.
And I have to be the one that's reading it. And for him, he's okay. He's just there to listen. He can listen. But what I'm saying is that in sharing what we share, it's validating ourselves through sharing. A lot of times people just want to be heard and receive also some kind of a confirmation. But I feel like for me anyways, it's just I have to say what it needs to be said in order for me to have a clear picture, in order for me to be able to go back into and concentrate and to really see the picture for the way it is. A lot of times I do different types of things. And only by doing these things, for example, coordinating events, doing the Torah inauguration for my father and my brother in their names, and all these things, it actually helps me see a bigger picture. It's not about
You're not doing it for them, you're doing it for yourself in some way.
And yeah, definitely in some way. But it's also creating a clearer picture, like after the fact. If that makes sense. Yeah,
It's going to make sense. Meaning, as this conversation goes, it's going to make a lot of sense. They always do. Question. So, at what point did you come from Tzfat to Canada? How did that transpire?
So we moved to Toronto in 2005. It was the summer of when Gush Katif was given back to the to the Palestinians, and we moved to we moved to Canada in 2005. I grew up in there from 2005 to.
Was there a connection between the two?
No, what happened?
The fact
was,
that you left because you were in the north, it had nothing to do with.
No, nothing with that. It's just
You're just putting the timeline together.
Yeah,
got it.
my mother met my stepfather at which is basically my father. She met him at 2002, 2003, and then they got married 2004. And 2005 we moved to Canada. He's originally from Canada.
You carry his name?
And I carry his last name. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And
your last name before was what?
Shaul.
Got it.
Yeah. And now it's Herman.
Okay.
And we moved to Canada. And from Canada, I went through high school. 2005, 2009, and then I went to yeshiva after in Israel, and met my wife. And 2010, I met my wife. 2011, we got married, and we moved here 2 years ago. After
Beautiful.
losing my brother and through COVID and through all of that, we decided to make a change for our life, for our family, and.
So at what point in time did this healing journey start? You had mentioned even before Sweat Lodge you were doing plant medicine, so bring us into that.
Sure. So it's about 3 years ago. It's 3 years ago for plant medicine, but the journey of healing started about 8 to 9 years ago with just therapy, healing.
So what brought you there?
I realized that I want more from my life. I want more from myself. I want more from what it is. And a lot of, through a lot of times in life, I realized that I don't like to go on this, it's like, I call it the hamster wheel. I don't like to go through life and being on one plane, being in one motion. Like, we need to go in an upper motion. We need to move on a different plane all the time. It's always developing and evolving. If we're stagnant, then that's not good. It's not healthy, and that's what I felt. It's like I always need to do more and more and more and more. There was always a search for more. So I started with therapy about 8 to 9 years ago. Realizing that I just can't continue living like this. I was diagnosed with clinical depression at 17, suicidal tendencies, and I had moments of narcotic abuse, alcohol abuse as well, which wasn't an addiction. It was more of an escape, numbing mechanism, but it wasn't to be consumed by as an addiction.
Why was it an addiction?
Because I was able to let it go very fast. It was a point in time where it was maybe a year.
So it wasn't
or two.
frequent, but it was
wasn't
extreme.
frequent. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah. It was, and I realized that, I just got to keep looking, keep searching, and something in me just, with all the depression, with all the hurt, with all the trauma, with all the and I just decided I'm going to therapy. I started going to one therapist and I finished with him. I went to another one. When I lost my brother, going back 3 years, I was already on 2 different types of antidepressants. I was taking something very strong. It's a SSRI inhibitor. It's called Paxil, and then another one is a mood stabilizer called Wellbutrin. And I was taking very high doses of both. And then after my brother passed away, I was even told my doctor, said I'm double dosing. I already started double dosing. He's like, well, I'm like, yeah, doctor, I'm already doing it. I was like, and I realized that it's not helping. With all that, with walking around with all these things and being treated for depression on that level, it wasn't helping. So I decided to do my first peyote ceremony 3 years ago, and that peyote ceremony changed my life. I was able to take the antidepressants and
Immediately.
Immediately. I went home and I was taking 30 milligrams of Paxil, which is, whoever knows, that's a very strong dose. I was taking 300 milligrams of Wellbutrin, which is a very, very strong dose. I was numb on all fronts, but if something in my mind was telling me, that's not for you, keep going, keep searching. So I went to a peyote ceremony and I came back home and I said, I don't need this anymore. And, call it a miracle, a phenomena. Whatever.
One ceremony.
Peyote.
No, I'm saying one ceremony and you were done with the medication.
One ceremony I was done with antidepressants. Yeah, I threw them. I went home. just flush him down the toilet, call my doctor. I told, and he's a big doctor, board certified doctor in Toronto, with addiction specifically, and I told him, doctor, I'm done with the medicine. He's like, you're crazy. You need to take some time. Yeah, we need to win you off the medicine. I told him, I'm done. Took me a couple of weeks to regain my focus, and took me a couple of weeks to get there.
Did you tell him about the peyote?
I did tell him about the peyote. He did
What did
not understand. He's familiar with it. He's already had patients that went and seeked it, and he's learning about it. So it was very hard for him to kind of give a right answer right away. And I went and saw him a few times after, a bunch of times actually after, and I needed more. So
You needed more what?
I needed just more healing. And
Got it. But you were done with the medication.
I was done with the medication.
Was he at any point curious that you were taking large doses of medication, did one plant medicine journey, and we're done with that? Not that you were done with healing. You're still on your path, but I'm saying that you were done with medication, which means that the benefits that medication were giving you, you're getting more.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. He was astonished by it, but he
didn't care to research it.
He didn't care to research it even more. I don't think so. And I just left it as that. I just kept moving. You're actually giving me an awareness moment. I didn't realize, that he didn't even pay attention to it, because
it should be a huge deal.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And I was able to continue pushing through.
Because it's also, I don't know how common the story is, but it's fairly common. It's common enough. You weren't the only person in the world to get off of you weren't the only person in the world to get off of medication using plant medicines.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely.
So, I've you would think if a doctor saw that right in their face, they would be very intrigued and want to understand what this medicine is.
It's true. I'm surprised right now while we're talking that, that he didn't even, but I could tell you that my therapist right now, who's been in therapy for 40 years, and he ran his own rehab center, and his wife is a big author of attachment theory, and she's been researching it for many years. He sees it. He sees the change. He sees how plant medicine has actually made me more aware, and how I'm integrating plant medicine with him, and how I'm able to share, and I'm able to show how I'm moving through my path of healing. And going back to a podcast that you shared before recently with Zach.
Zach Gould.
It was yes. I think it was a beautiful podcast. And I'm getting chills telling you this, is that what part of our plant medicine journey are we really putting the roots in, and how are we integrating into life, and what's our real intention? Because it's one thing to go into plant medicine and to seek healing, and then it's the other thing is to come out of it and to bring it back to life, and to bring it back to practical use. And I can share with you that through my healing path, I was able to get off the antidepressants, and I was able to share with the doctor. I was able to go back on plant medicine and different journeys, different things, and go back to a therapist, and go back to a hypnotherapist, and go back to different modalities, and have people around me that guide me and show me, what you're doing is good, what you should be doing more, integrate more, do more. And a lot of times what I'm noticing about plant medicine is that, there is this hype of plant medicine, but then there's no hype around the integration part. There's no hype around getting back to life with practical, manifestation. So for me, that's how I continued my plant medicine journey. And I can't tell you that at the beginning I was doing very well with plant medicine. At the beginning, I was so attracted to it that I wanted to self-regulate, self-medicate on different types of plant medicines like psilocybin. Then I realized that it's not what it is. I need to have guidance. I need to have guidance both in the healing world and both in medical
yes.
and everything, and continue that on. So my thing was always going back to it is no matter where I was with my traumas, no matter where I was with my darkness, there was something that was telling me just keep pulling forward. Keep going towards what you're seeking. Keep going towards the truth. And that's why I had to dissect myself so much, to the point where it's not my father, it's not my mother, and I had a whole crazy relationship with my mother, and today, thank God, it's much better. It's not any of these things. It's not the abuse, the physical abuse that I felt. And my point is that I had to find what the root cause. So basically, to explain this in a way that I kind of like just threw it at my therapist, and he threw it back at me. And while we're talking, I was literally drawing a diagram from my subconscious, and I was basically like, something was telling me, just draw this thing, explain yourself. So I drew 3 circles, and the way these 3 circles represent, it's like taking a stone and throwing into water. And once that stone gets thrown in, it creates an effect of circles right around, goes, and there's an inner circle, there's an outer circle, and it keeps growing and growing. So I say there's these 3 circles. My theory is that the outer circle is the manifestation of whatever's in the center, and we'll get to the center. So the outer circle is anger, resentment.
It's what people see.
Is what people see, right? The inner circle is something that's more closer to what the root of the cause is, and it could be the neglect, physical abuse. It could be verbal abuse. It could be different things. And then at the center of it is the trauma. The center of it is the actual cause root of what that is, of what manifested after. So addiction is just a symptom of what, the trauma that we experience.
So, and for you, all of that points to sexual abuse.
And for me, it all points to sexual abuse, 100%. And there's different dysfunctionalities that I went through with time, that I realized I can't have intimacy. I don't feel safe with intimacy. I avoid it, and I thought, like, I'm very healthy. As a teenager, I had many girlfriends, but I didn't have sexual intimacy with any of them. I had many emotional relationships, but not physical relationships. So I was able to continue dissecting this even further and seeing, okay, I can be intimate. Why can't I be intimate? And what part of me wants this or that, and why is it ignoring this or that? And I realized that this is it. This is it. And it's hard because you want to bring out a story, you want to share, and you want to be clear, you want to be to the point, you want to bring some proof, you want to bring some validation, you want to bring some everything to bring it together, right? And at one point, it's like, how do I do that where I have pieces of a puzzle? I don't have the whole picture. But then I realized through a very recent process that I did, I realized that not only that I went through it, we did a process in the Adama, and I'm going to share. This is my process, so I'm going to share it. And it was a point of clearing. It was a point of like releasing whatever it is that I'm holding on to. And in this process, you guided me through it, and you told me you have more. There's more that needs to come out of you. And I was like, well, even going through the process, I was able to share with the whole room, and I was able to give, and I felt like, what is he saying? Like, I have more to there's more rage, there's more to scream out that I didn't scream out, there's more that I didn't let out. And I was thinking about it a lot, and I realized that after I did this process, and it was very recent that I did this process, the next day I was at home. It was right before the Sabbath. I was sitting outside. I'm having a smoke, and I'm shaking to a point where it's like the rage is like is coming out, and I'm like, I never felt this rage in my life. With all the resentment I had towards people, towards God, towards my father, towards my mother, towards everything that I've been through, and all this. Even knowing that the little child is hurt inside, and even knowing that he's not feeling safe, and even knowing that he's sad, and even knowing that he's unstable and he's dysfunctional, all these things. And I went through different processes of that. I've never felt, even carrying my brother's casket to the grave at COVID, when we only had 10 people allowed to be at the cemetery because it was lockdown, and Canada was as there wasn't a good place to be in during COVID. Like you couldn't bury somebody, and you can only have 10. They will only allow 10 people there. With all these things that were going around, taking my brother's casket out of the car, knowing that I was the one who was there for him and nobody else was.
So with all those experiences, you
with
never
all these
experienced this type
experiences, I
of
never
rage.
felt this rage. Never. I felt rage beyond. It was just like if I go on a scale of 1 to 10, it was 10 out of 10. It was like poof. And I felt like I can't even go back inside the house. I have to stay here, and I have to process this because it's unhealthy. And not only that, I do cold plunges and hape in my house for my community, for people that need it, and people come and they, it's a beautiful container for people to experience. Even then, I jumped into a cold plunge that was, I think, 39 degrees, and it's cold. I was sizzling in there. Like, oh, it's nice, it's good, but it's just taking maybe a little bit.
Okay,
of
and
the
what
edge
was
off.
it? What was the rage?
The rage was the rage of abuse, like the realizing how much I kept inside and how much I didn't let go of it yet, and how much I'm still
Understood.
in the process.
And as you sit here now, do you feel like you're still searching for more of the core memory to put a word to it, or you're comfortable?
No, I'm
with
comfortable with
You're
it.
comfortable.
I'm at a point where that's why I was, coming here. I realized that this is it. This is where, this is how it needs to be done, and this is how it needs to be shared. And whatever else will come, I will accept it. If there's more the memories, and I do hypnotherapy for about, I think, 8 months now. I don't know. I think 8 months or 7 months, and it's very consistent. I do it almost every week, and I do 2 hours a week. Sometimes our sessions even go to 3 hours. Some sessions are very intense, and some sessions are just to kind of, some maintenance in between. And I realized that through all these things, I'm still in the process of clearing. And I realized with this hypnotherapy, which is the deepest part of like working on the subconscious, I realized that this is it. Like accept it. Accept whatever it is, share it the way it needs to be shared, and take it the way it is, and whatever needs to come up will come up later. You don't need to dissect it even more. But I do this actually in a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies. I mean, I participate in a bunch of them, and then lately I've been more helping. So there is a point in time where we come as participants to things, and there's a point for myself. I'm talking in the I statement of myself, and there's a point in time where it's like, okay, it's done, it's enough. You've done a lot of work around this. You've been dissecting it. You've been working on it. Now, if you want to go deeper into it, stop participating. Start leading the way, or start sharing this, and this will actually take you to the next level and going deeper into that. So even with ayahuasca ceremonies, I can say one to give as an example. I take a full dose of medicine, and then I go into a state of place where I'm with myself. I'm in a deep state of consciousness. I am going through a process, and then at one point, I'm able to get back up and able to help the room and go between people and support them in different ways, helping them with different things, being there for people. So I noticed that, there's that point in life where I need to do the work on myself. And then there's a point in life where I need to do the work on myself by being there for others. So sharing with others, and so I step from one place to the next. And that's what happened to me even with the sweat lodges. It was very quick. Usually the natives, these specific ones, they're very traditional, and they don't just hand everybody
Right, they can take years to become a facilitator.
Yeah, it takes a long time. They ask for a vision quest. They ask you to go on a 4-day fast in the forest with nobody around you, with no drinking, no nothing. There's different elements to this, and they said they were astonished. They said we did it like I think 6 months of just being introduced and going into it very consistently. They said that you're ready. So there's a point in time where it's like I can be a participant, and there's a point in time where I need to start showing up in a leadership way. And it's not, and it's for everyone. You know, I take this teaching of the Rebbe, the Rebbe Milubavitch of Chabad, in a very, you know, in a very beautiful way. The Rebbe was a leader that he created leaders. He did not create followers. And that's how I see life. You know, that's how I see healing. That's how I see, you know, fighting the battle of the good versus evil, or the dark versus the light. Where we all need to show up as leaders, and doing that with, you know, first we need to participate. We need to be introduced. We need to be, you know, there to do the work and to work on ourselves. And we are continuing to do the work. Even after we're not participating anymore, now we're taking on a leadership role in different ways. You know, I have friends that bought cold plunges, and they're because of me, because the House of More, and now they're having people in their communities coming to cold plunges. People that have never been around healing, never been around the terminology or the experience of healing, and you know, maybe they're uncomfortable with one thing, but they're willing to try this. So I see how it manifests, you know, that we're bringing healing, we're healing ourselves, and it manifests into others, healing others. So that's what we're trying to do, you know.
How do you measure your progress? How do you know if you're healing, moving forward, moving backward? How do you know?
So, you know, that's a good question. When I go back to sweat lodges, that's the time for me to see that. I call it the self-measure process, or, you know, in Hebrew we say cheshbon nefesh. You know, that's the time where we actually sit and calculate ourselves. And in the sweat lodge, I'm able to go back every time and look at my process, you know, and see how I've changed as a father. I have 4 kids. I changed as a husband in different ways, many different ways. I changed as a person around my community. In Canada, I was living in, like I said before, like on a hamster wheel. I remember going to my rabbi and asking him, you know, can I do something? I want to do more. You know, just the fact that I'm able to give money, or, you know, and able to do certain things, I want to do more. So my change is coming by seeing change, is by seeing my timeline. You know, this is where I've started my healing, my process. This is where it just began, and this is where it is today. And there's a lot of times where it's like I didn't do enough, and it's a lot of times where there's criticism from close people, you know, or doubts coming up, but I see the changes. I see the changes in myself.
I'm curious to ask about your process with religion during all of this. So, you know, obviously you grew up in Svat, right? Which is a very, I don't know if religious is the right word, but certainly
very religious.
Yeah, I don't like the word religious, but I'm saying it's a very observant place, very Jewish place. And then today, obviously, you're sitting here as a beard, a yarmulke, right? Very clearly a proud Jew. Your car is covered with proud Jew symbols.
Yeah.
So it's an important part of your identity. I'm curious about your journey with Judaism through all this.
It's been a very interesting journey. You know, what comes up to me right now is that I want more of life. I want more of myself. I want more of everything. And with religion, I couldn't connect to it on the way that I was taught. I couldn't connect to it on the way I was deceived by it, or seeing what it is for what it's not. And you know, many times I went through chaotic stages. There was times I didn't keep the holiest days of the year. I didn't keep Yom Kippur, and I didn't keep Passover, and I was resentful and going back and forth. But what kind of brought me back to everything is the search of wanting to have a real connection. There isn't anything else. And even this year, I could tell you, you know, trying to answer this question from this point, is that this year I went to Yom Kippur as completely, unconditionally loving myself and accepting myself and that was the only way I was able to accept God and have and connect with God this year, and to unconditionally be there no matter what, show up however I need to show up. And
Can you contrast that with Yom Kippur last year? What did it look like last year?
last year it was completely different.
Meaning,
It was very rigid.
You showed up?
I showed up, but it was rigid. It was sad. It was hard.
heavy.
It was heavy. This year it came out of love. It came out of acceptance. And the way I came to realize this, and I think I've shared this before in a Swad Lodge, is that, and a good friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, shared this with me. He said that, you know, when we do this sermon of Amida, when we stand in the morning or in the afternoon or at night, we do this sermon of we stand before God. We say the words of the God, my God, and the God of my forefathers. We say Elokeinu ve'Elokei Avotenu right when we start this sermon. We say the whole blessing, and then we say my God and the God of my forefathers. So the way I understood it, and it really brought like very deep connection for me, is that you have your God. This is your God, the way you have a personal relationship with God. And how can I have a personal relationship with God? You know, I wasn't able to have a personal relationship with the God of my forefathers. I can't because of all this trauma and all this things and all this pain. How I can connect to this God? I don't understand him, and I don't think that this is the God that I want to connect to, the way he's perceived from the God of my forefathers. And I realized the only way I can have a connection with God is through my personal relationship with God, through the God that I perceive to be God. And it's a very
Meaning, and then from there you can tap into the God of your forefathers.
The God of my forefathers.
Right. Meaning, once there's a personal relationship, now I can lean on the tradition. Now I can lean on the culture. I can lean on the holidays, the laws, and see where I can find the meaning and
yes. So
depth.
There is, you know, and I tell this to people. People ask me for advice for certain things, and I say at the end of the day, it's only your choice. So how do we make that personal choice of what we need to do? You make the choice by first tapping into the first thing that shows you kindness and love, and showing you that this is, find your way, and God says that. He says, open me a small opening, and I will take that opening and I will make it the biggest opening that you can, and the biggest blessing you can ever have. So for me, that teaching, that teaching tells me that first try to find the goodness in things. In my life, with what I've been through, my brother couldn't survive it. My brother told me I can't continue on in this life, and he didn't kill himself. He didn't commit suicide. He overdosed on fentanyl, and it was poisoned. It was just the amount of fentanyl that was in that batch was 14 times the dose that somebody can even take. And even fentanyl is so deadly on its own, even by touching it. So even more with what he took. But, you know, something about my brother, basically, you know, my brother shared with me this one point in time where he was K-holing, which is a term using for ketamine abuse. And it's when you get to a point where you're just not, you're in a different dimension. You're down a rabbit hole. So he was sharing with me that he experienced sexual abuse, and he was shaking. And I was very dismissive, because I was acting as a parent. I wasn't acting as a brother. I wasn't acting as a friend. I wasn't acting as an unconditional caregiver. I was just there to give it to him on the head for abusing himself, and I had to take care of him and bring him into my house in the last years of his life, and then I had to get him out of my house because that was going to end my relationship if he was going to stay with my wife. And, you know, at one point he was in this K-hole moment where he expressed that he had this thing, he had this abuse, and he shared who it was. And I was dismissive. I was dismissive to his pain. And you know, and then going back to it with God, how am I connecting my brother to God is because in that moment, I realized that if we want to have a personal relationship with God, if we want to have, how did I become I became religious. You know, and I have my moments where I'm up and down. I have my moments when I'm in and out. Even with this, I have my moments because I'm still human. And with all that, I realized that, like, how do I create a personal relationship with God is first let go of the shame and guilt. First let go of those things that you feel that you can't have a relationship with God, because how can I be in front of him? How can I be in front of this God that might not accept all these things that I've done? And basically I was able to come to Yom Kippur this year with to this day, saying that I do not feel this shame and guilt anymore. I let go. I'm
I
letting
think it's
go.
understated. I think it's understated how how inappropriate guilt and shame is in a relationship with our Creator.
Yes.
It's so. The Friedrich Rebbe says it. I think I shared it with the Adama group. Yeah, my friend Schneur Hickson shared it with me. I shared it with the Adama group. And I believe the language there was the Friedrich Rebbe saying that we have to run away from guilt.
It's like death. He calls it like something. He uses the words of death around it. Like he says, like it's so bad that it's like
we have to flee from it.
Flee from it, yeah. And I realized that, like,
I think we have to view it now as a form of denial of God, meaning the same way we'd say if someone doesn't believe in God, right? If they say they deny God's existence. So if someone feels guilty in the relationship with God, maybe it's fair to say they're denying an aspect of God that is so integral to God that it's as if one is denying God.
Right. I agree with that 100%, because from my experience, for what I went through, God exists all around. And a child receiving that type of abuse, that's shame and guilt. Growing up and then dysfunctionally behaving in a certain way, more shame and guilt. Getting married and being the way I was up until a certain point, more shame and guilt. And behaving around this in a dysfunctional way reinforces that shame and guilt. So that's why it says it's Elokeinu and Elokei Avotenu. It's my God and then the God of my forefathers. Because how can you have your God? How can you stand in front of God? No shame and guilt. How can you have a loving relationship with God? There's no shame and guilt. God does not hold you accountable for anything. And there's.
When you say that God doesn't hold one accountable for anything, what do you mean by that?
He doesn't hold you accountable for the things you've done wrong. He wants you to move on. He wants you to let go. He wants you to continue, move on. It's.
You're saying it's the present moment that matters, not the.
Yeah.
Right. There's always room in every moment for us to be completely here, regardless of our past.
Yeah, it says there in Tanya that a person in this book of Tanya, in this beautiful teaching, that in the moment that somebody does something, his actions are considered to be something that's not good, and like in that moment he's considered to be not good because like the actions are considered to be not good. The second later that moment passed, that's gone. That's already non-existent.
Right. I thought of it,
that's how I understood it.
Yeah, growing up, we were told a lot that machshava dibur ma'isa, thought, speech, and action are levushim, right? Clothes. And it hit me recently that to say something is our clothes means it's not the essence of a person, right? My clothes are not me. They can bring out my essence. They can express my essence. But the way we sin, quote unquote, is through machshava dibur ma'isa, right? Either we do something, we think something, we say something, right? Those are our sins. Are all in that domain. We can't sin without one of those three things.
Yes.
But all of that is it's our external. It's not us. I did a podcast at some point. I was doing different styles back then. When I first started them, right at the beginning of COVID, I called it "Forgive Me for My Guilt," because I was realizing how toxic and terrible guilt is in the relationship and how inappropriate it is in the relationship with. To constantly feel guilty, to constantly feel wrong, to constantly feel like our mistakes are there. And half the time we're doing something, the whole energy we're coming home with, so to speak, is with guilt.
Right.
And how terrible and toxic. And what was interesting, I think that a lot of people mistake guilt for what someone say like a pintele yid, meaning like my heart is my soul is talking to me, and that's why I feel guilty in the moment. So some people will feel like their guilt is a form of holiness,
Right.
and
That's
what they'll say is, look, I feel guilty because I didn't put on tefillin. I feel guilty because of Yom Kippur I didn't do it appropriately, or even I ate on Yom Kippur, whatever it is, and that's why I feel guilty. It's my soul which is speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did this podcast, I did it with Omar Pinto, which obviously you know from Adama. Omar Pinto grew up Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was Jehovah's Witness. Yeah, Jehovah's Witness. And he had all of the guilt. So it was very interesting to me that someone, right, and it wasn't his Pintli screaming out.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't his soul calling to him that you certainly couldn't reconcile these two religions in any meaningful way between Jehovah's Witness and Judaism. And the fact that both of us were feeling very similar feelings around God, even though we were communicated very different messages, helped me understand that it wasn't a godly feeling.
Right.
It was a very human imposed feeling that any authority figure could impose on us if they begin to speak to us in the name of God.
Right.
God did this, God did that. So I thought it was important that we underscore
Yes.
guilt, because like the Friedrich says, we must run for it. Yeah, run from it like we run from death.
Yes. You know, to add to what you're saying, basically to explain more of what I was saying, you know, there's this verse that says, Shiviti Hashem lenigdi tamid, that God is always before me. So what does that mean, that nigdi, before me? You know, and how can we have a relationship with God as if God is in front of me? What does that mean? So for me, the way I was able to see it is that how am I able to completely, unconditionally accept myself without any limitations, without anything whatsoever? And if I'm able to really go inwards and accept myself and pass through all the shame and guilt and love myself, and it's a hard process, and it's, you know, at the beginning it's weird and awkward, you know, to love myself and to say these words, you know, it was hard for me, but I got to a point where, you know, if I want to have a personal relationship with God, I gotta have a relationship with myself. I gotta love myself. I gotta give myself space. I gotta nurture myself. I gotta understand that I'm not alone, and I have, you know, and even if I feel alone at times, I have myself, and myself is good enough. And, you know, even doing a few processes, and I've been doing, actually, since I did it in Adama, and I did it a little bit before Adama. I did this process of sitting in front of a mirror and just saying words of affirmation. And I use actually Louise Hay a lot for that too.
Yeah.
Louise Hay brought a lot of subliminal affirmation. She had some podcasts. She passed away, but she has some podcasts on Spotify, and her CDs were digitalized and put into different things. And, you know, that's so important to get to a point where somebody can look in the mirror and just really appreciate themselves for who they are without anything whatsoever. Look at every part of your body and say, yeah, I appreciate that. Look at yourself. Yes, I appreciate you today. I love you. And the only way to have a personal relationship with God, a real spiritual, lively connection, that I feel I'm able to show up. I'm able to show up for myself. I'm able to show up for God because I'm showing up for myself. You know, people that think that they need to show up for God first before they show up for themselves, I don't see how it works. I don't see it. I believe that healing needs to come within. You need to give yourself love. You need to give yourself that, and then you bring God into it. By doing that, you create space for God. Because, you know, within ourselves, within myself, I can say that there was no room for anything. There was room for everything else that was negative and distorted, and all the negative, you know, the things that weren't serving me. And then when I was able to just say, no, I love myself. Wait, there's more space to create here. There's more space to bring God into, let God in just a little bit. Love yourself, you know. And it's very hard for people to do. And I see it in synagogues. I see it in different communities. I see it in, you know, people just, you know, they have like I'm saying it for myself, a misguided perception of how God is and how God should be, and it's a misguided perception of themselves. You know, God says, like, you know, open a little opening for me. That means that give it to yourself to open that opening for me. You know, I will heal you. I will help you. And whatever happened. Why it was meant to happen, I'm not even going to try to understand. I'm not even going to try to understand why things have to happen the way they do. King David says in Psalms, in one verse, I'm going to say it in Hebrew, translate it to English the best way I could. He says, "Beniflaot v'gdolot mimeni lo halachti." He says, in things that are greater than me, I did not walk in. Like I didn't try to walk in and understand. And I'm thinking about King David. King David was a person that achieved greatness in his life, and after life, he became a part of the God's chariot. It says that in Kabbalah, he became like something very high up there in the realms. Like his soul is intertwined with God's chariot. With that. And for him to say something like that, what does that mean? Like he was in such a high level and conscious state and the knowledge and everything, and he wrote the book of Psalms, which has a whole life of wisdom that we can barely even touch. How can he say that there was bigger things that he couldn't walk in? Because sometimes, just it gets to a point of stop trying to understand everything. Try to stop questioning. It's like just follow the process. It's a part of surrender. For me, addiction, I learned that's a part of surrender. It's like I don't have to understand everything. I mean, I don't have to. I can question because it's hard for me. It's painful, but let go at the same time. Because if you're not gonna, it's not gonna make sense. So you're holding on to something, and if you're holding on to that, then you're not moving on.
Yeah, I want to connect this to where we started the conversation, because at the beginning of the conversation you spoke about sharing, right? And the way you said it, you spoke about sharing your traumas and things like that. I would probably use softer language of just sharing our story, right?
Right.
We think in stories, we understand in stories, but stories are the meaning we give the facts. Right? When we start putting two facts together, and this happened and that happened, sometimes they're directly connected, and sometimes we see it in some sort of connected way. But we create that connection in our mind. We give certain meaning to it. Mm-hmm. And for example, is we can start working on a project and we can run into a stumbling block. And one person says, it's obviously not meant to be. Right? And another person says, anything good must be worked for, right? So they're both operating with the same set of facts. One gives it meaning to walk away, and another gives it meaning to push forward, right? So it's like so what happens as a child is that based on our experiences and based on what happens to us, we start creating meaning and stories related to it. Right. I'm a victim. Things always go wrong. Right before it gets good, it gets bad. Whatever it is, or if it gets bad, it gets good. We can start creating all sorts of meaning around things, but we don't even know that we do. And then we have an opportunity to start speaking our stories. We can pull apart at some of these meanings we've created around life, and those which are helpful to us we can retain, and those which are unhelpful we can discard. But one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking, because you talked about loving yourself, and you started this talking about the importance of expression and sharing one's story, is that one way we know if we've accepted ourselves is if we're able to share that and speak that to another human being. Mm-hmm. Not always in this way. That meaning from a podcast or, speaking from a microphone. But if there's something inside of us that we have not been able to share with another person, it brings us too much shame or brings us too much fear, it's a fairly good sign that we haven't accepted that part of ourselves.
Right.
In the 12 steps, step 5, step 4 talks about, it says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So often when people are going through the steps, they write down their fears, they write down their resentments, they write down their attributes, but it's really, depending on the sponsor one chooses to work with, it's fairly extensive, but there are certain things that are core to the 12 steps. Like in the literature of the 12 steps, it talks about making a fears list, making a resentment list, and really listing it out. And then in step 5, it says, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Right. Meaning essentially the things that came about as a result of listening through our fears and resentments and understanding the patterns there, now we have an exact nature of our wrongs. Mm-hmm. And it says we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And I thought about this expression, like, I admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. Like what? Right. Just say admitted to another human being, right? Or just admitted to God. Like what's each one? And I feel like ultimately what it's trying to get us is to admit us to God, right? That's the thing, to admit to God the exact nature of our wrongs. Essentially, which is the same thing as saying we've accepted it for ourselves. But everyone can say, I've admitted to God, right? A lot of people who are deathly afraid of other people knowing, they'll say, oh, but God knows, I've admitted to God. So this is, how do you know if you admitted to God? So continue the sentence. Admit to God, to ourselves. If we've admitted to ourselves the exact nature of our wrongs. Okay, how does one know if we admitted to ourselves for real? There's only one way to know if we admitted to ourselves. If we follow the next step, admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. So it's super important what you're saying. The link between those two things is actually one-to-one. That accepting ourselves, which seemed to be something that's very important to you, where you sit here today in a level of healing, that I've accepted my confusion, I've accepted my story, I've accepted what's happened to me, I've accepted what's happened to my brother, to my father, the good, the bad, the ugly, the unknown, all of that, put into a pot, and I accept it.
Yes.
And that is very connected to also being able to say, I express it. I express it. We can't do one without the other.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you know, and the search continues. I mean, you know, there will be more things to uncover, more things, you know, there's things that I haven't uncovered. There's things that, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited what comes up, because, you know, I did recently, like in the last few years, I did this thing. It was called, call it exposure therapy. So I go on this trip once a year.
What is it called, the therapy?
Exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy.
Yeah. So we go once a year to these different trips. One year I went to Guatemala. Then last year I went to Nicaragua, and we go for like 3-4 days at a time, and we do things that take us completely out of our comfort. Like, you know, I did 1 year I did paragliding. In Guatemala, I did paragliding, and if anybody that knows me, I can't even climb a ladder without looking down. So never mind jumping off a cliff with a paraglide with a you know, somebody was there with me. You know, it was a guide that was guiding the glide. But, you know, the point is that where do we want to heal, and when do we want to let go? So the exposure therapy taught me that, you know, through everything that you're going through, just keep letting go even more. The letting go doesn't stop. People think that, like in addiction, you know, once you go through you go through the 12 step and you go through that surrender moment, that's it. That surrender is done. I'm done with, no, there's so many more ways of surrendering. There's so many more ways of letting go. And it just keeps, you know, there's bettering and like making ourselves even more and more in tune with that. And okay, so I was able to let go of one aspect of my life. There's many more aspects that I need to continue and let go of different things. You know?
We're constantly making attachments. So for example, in one moment, letting go may look like I'm going to let go of a fear and I'm going to speak on a podcast. Mm-hmm. And in another moment, the letting go, maybe I have to let go of the podcast.
Right. Yeah, that too. Yeah, that right. Too. 100%.
And then we can let go of it in different ways. We can let go of our idea of it, or we can let go of it completely. But that's what I'm saying. It's not there were these 1,000 things we came into the world with, and we have to get through letting go of all 1,000 things. It's the thing we let go into, that thing can be the thing we're now holding on to.
Right.
It's, you know.
Right. So, and I was saying before, you know, and I was telling you,
it's literally a breath to breath practice. That's why it's always there. It's a breath to breath practice.
The evolvement of the healing journey is that it's always on the upper motion. So it's like today I'm, you know, it's like I have a hard time seeing when people are going through the same motion, and they're doing a healing, they're doing a process of plant medicine. They come out and it seems like they're just back at square one, or, you know, not where, you know, integrated, keep going. So the letting go is always happening. It's like, it's like continuing to integrate, continuing to bring in more and to be practical. That's the reason why I do sweat lodges, because it's like, you go to a place where it's physical detoxifying moment, and it's unbearable, and it's demanding. So, and that's letting go. Every time I go into a sweat lodge, I let go even more. Even a little bit more. What else? You know, and I'm not holding on to anything. I don't want to hold on to anything. I'm ready to accept things, and I'm ready to move on. Yes, and then there's those moments, like you said, that's like, you know, I'm doing this, but you know, so but the upper motion is what it is. It's and you know, the evolvement is like through time, seeing like, you know, our
It's
growth.
moving forward.
Yeah, just keep
I
moving
heard,
forward.
I
Yeah.
don't know who I heard it from. I'd love if someone can get me the source, but I heard it in the name of the Baal Shem Tov that Kedusha is something that's moving forward. It's constantly moving. And the opposite of Kedusha, often we call Klippa, right? It's something that's stuck.
Wow.
So-
I love it. Definitely.
So evolution is holy.
Evolution is holy. Yeah.
A question
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
This journey, plant medicine, healing, especially the recent parts of it, not going all the way back to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
has it brought you closer to Judaism, further away, in what we, you know, some and some?
Definitely brought me closer to a place where I would never be without. I'm not sure what other way would have worked out, but this is the way, right? So plant medicine definitely, and this healing journey definitely brought me closer to God. I was able to tap into the part of myself that loves God, that's seeing the, you know, I think the Rabbi Nachman Breslev says that to see the good in everything, just see the light in everything, and the way I was able to do that, it was with plant medicine. I was able to like see the goodness. I was able to connect with the part of me that wants God through Hasidic teachings. So I was able to, you know, the creativity, the flowness of what I went through with different types of plant medicines wanted me to express more of that creativity, the love for, the desire for learning, for going into a deeper state of mind. And for me, I like, for example, you know, that's how it's for me. I like the Hasidic teachings. I like the mystical realms. I like the essence of life. The go down to the you know, to the highest place. I mean, go up to the highest place and understand try to understand things. And plant medicines have given me that, like, you know, through God I was able to see that. I was able to connect, you know, and then once I learned that, all of a sudden I'm like, I have all these books in my house, because after my brother passed away, I decided I'm going to fill up my house with books, and I'm going to start, I don't know
Books,
why.
Sfarim, both?
It's Sfarim, like,
okay.
you know,
Holy
books. And I was able to do that. I kind of jumped ahead because I was like, okay, I just want to have that. So I filled up my house full of books. I filled up my brother who lives in Montreal. I filled up his house full of books, and we went crazy. We spent like $20,000 buying books, and we bought sets of things. And then, like, I realized that I'm always like, I always jump 10 steps ahead, and then somehow I look back and I'm like, oh, that's why I did it. So I don't, that's how I don't, like, you know, it's like sweat lodges. Oh, okay. That was like, okay, I see how it's manifesting. Like,
Yes.
you know, things are just,
Catches up to you, yeah.
it catches up to me like after the fact. So, you know, I could say this specifically to ayahuasca. I was able to go to very deep states where I connected with Hasidut. So going back on the Sabbath, going back to integration, going into practical use of myself after the fact of coming back from a journey. I go on the Sabbath. I spend 2 hours for the last 2 years, 2 hours every Sabbath. I sit with a friend, and we're learning the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab had some very, very deep text on the that explains the mystical of life, and he brings the most mystical books, and he puts them all together in these teachings. It's called the Ein Beit, and he takes like all the hardest things to understand, the Zohar, the Etz Chaim, which is it's another very fundamental book in Kabbalah, and different types of Kabbalistic teachers with their texts, and he puts it all down into this book. And I was able to sit there 2 hours a week, enjoy that, and then come back and look in my library and say, wow, now I want to learn this, and I want to learn this, and I want to learn the technical stuff. I want to learn the things that I don't want to learn, because now it's like I have the passion, because I can see God through what I'm doing, and I'm able to even go into that book and try to understand it the way I'm understanding the text that I'm already reading. And it says that, you know, in Masechet Avot, I'm not sure how you translate it to English, but Masechet Avot says that Leolam Ilmad Adam.
What do you mean Pirkei Avot?
Pirkei Avot, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So, in Pirkei Avot, we learn in one verse that a person should always learn where his heart desires. He should go to that place and he should learn from there, because he can always go back to other things and learn and connect to everything else. So it's like open that opening and create that space where you can, just give yourself a chance. You know what I mean? That's what it was for me. Because I always wanted to learn. I always want to understand why, or try to understand why. Okay, and let's say I don't want to get the answer right away, whatever it is,
Right.
but I want to try to understand the why. There's a whole actual mystical terminology to this concept, and in a very, very interesting way. But the why and understanding why, because from why you can understand different things. Just from understanding. Explaining the why, not understanding the why. But anyway, so going back, I realized that if I want to connect, I give myself space. If I want to connect, I got to do what I enjoy. Go do what you enjoy. What part of the Judaism you want to explore? What part of your life you want to give yourself love to? Give yourself a chance, and and that's how I did it for myself, and that's how I'm able to want to have religion. And to want to be religious, or to want to have a connection with God, or I'm not saying every day I'm able to do it. And
I understand that. It was overall, because obviously there's a lot of
people
have a lot of questions. People have a lot of questions around plant medicine. There's no ceremony we've offered at the House of More that has had as much criticism as a sweat lodge.
Right.
None. Not recently, I think, since you've gotten involved, but still. In general, I don't experience much criticism for two reasons. But what I mean by that, the one reason I just don't hear that much of it. But the second is also that I'm not really in a community that gives people that much opportunity to.
Right.
I'm sure that were I in, I would hear some. You are in a community that affords a lot of opportunity for
sure.
these type of criticisms. So. For me, the sweat lodge was surprising criticism, meaning I don't usually get much or any, and I got a good amount. So I'm sure you got a ton.
Oh yeah,
and a ton. So I'm curious about that. What that experience was like for you, and then I'll share my own. So.
Sure. So people have a hard time with it. People are having a hard time with forget about even the sweat lodge. Even you mentioned the word ceremony. They have a hard time with it.
People get all twisted up with that word.
Yeah, and I'm like, what's not a ceremony? You can create a ceremony from everything in life. You can do tikkun chatzot. It's a ceremony.
Yeah, baseball. The opening pitch is a ceremony.
It's a ceremony. I don't anything and everything is a ceremony. Like, why is that a problem? So what I came to realize is that
the reason is that people associate the word ceremony with something spiritual, and religious people get very scared by spiritual.
Yeah. Exactly. And I came to realize that, is it the sweat lodge that's bothering people? So I dissected. I sat with somebody we go head to head on everything. We explosive. So I sat with him and I said, okay, the ceremony is a problem. Okay, I'll change the name. Okay, and it's not. And then when he heard that I said that, then it's the sweat lodge. I'm okay. What's about the sweat lodge? It's the way it's built. What do you want it to be? So you don't want it to be a dome. You want it to be a square. I'm like, okay, next. That's bothering you. Okay, because we didn't sit in different dome shapes as Jews throughout history. Who knows?
The shape of the dome was a problem?
The shape is a problem, yeah. Because it's the traditional native way is a dome, so it could be a problem for us. So, so I said, okay, so that's the problem. What's the next problem? Men and women sitting together. I said, okay, but they're not sitting together. We're separating men and women inside the space. Okay, that's a problem.
And often you're doing men only.
Yeah, and now we're starting to do men only. And terminology, I'm not using the same terminology. I'm not bringing in the different teachings and different things. We're actually making it almost Chabad right now. We're singing nigunim most of the time. It's actually the last men's one that we did. We had like 12 or 14 men, and it was nigunim the whole night. So
so without every example, what did you
with all this?
What did you get to?
So I realize it's not about the sweat lodge. It's not about ceremony. It's not about any of it. It's just about you doing something that's new and something that's they're not used to. And you know, when I ask people, I ask people, what's your intention? So you really, that's what bothers you? So I'll change that. And when I change it, something else is at the end of the day, it's all bothering. It's like there is no, it's intimidating because of the healing. It's intimidating because of the space, because it's new. Is it intimidating because somebody's doing something and I said it to a friend today that he asked me for some advice. And I told him, at the end of the day, what happens with people is that it's this is a point where it's black and white. And I hate saying those words, black and white, because I was traumatized by that as a kid in the religious aspect, or whatever you want to call it, and my own perception of things. But this is where it's black and white, where somebody's doing healing and when somebody's not doing healing. And when somebody's doing healing, it's intimidating the person who's not doing healing. So is it the connotation? Is it the terminology? What's bothering you? Because we can create all kinds of spaces for everyone to accept, and we can make it however they want. But what is it? You know, what's bothering you at the end of the day? Is the healing space bothering you, or the wording is bothering you? And I realized that it's just a healing space, and it doesn't matter what I do. I'll tell you something. Like recently, somebody was mentioning to me something about.
But I just want to add something to that before you go on. Is that one part of it is that we're naturally skeptical,
right?
Especially from communities, and some of it with good reason. We're naturally skeptical, so anything new we kind of have an eye towards. But there are oftentimes the most vocal skeptics, like those. It doesn't matter what you do,
right?
They won't change. But there are always people listening in who are saying, okay, once their mind accepts the fact that this is okay, then they're willing to move forward. So so sometimes the noisemakers are helping us to perfect it, to make it comfortable for others.
100%.
Right, the ones who are not. Because when I thought about it, like people started criticizing or asking a lot of questions to me, and I said, listen, ceremony of the house, you want to come, you don't want to, you want to come, you don't want to come, don't come. Like, I'm not forcing anyone to do anything, kind of do your own research. But then I noticed that from the way people were asking me questions is no, they were assuming that because it's at the House of More and because the food is kosher there and the kitchen's kosher and, you know, there are other things, we do men-only events and women-only events, that this too is kosher. So I said, oh, okay, so there's a certain expectation that people have of events that are happening at this space.
Mm-hmm.
And the criticism was cluing me into that there was, they felt there was a certain stamp. So I said, okay, so let's do what we can to meet that level. And actually, I spoke to a rabbi about different things that are going on there, and he couldn't get comfortable with the sweat lodge. As much as I tried, and he could not get comfortable with the sweat lodge. And he said, like, why can't you have a Jew run it? Like, why? I don't understand.
Right.
Like, everything you're telling me, why can't you have a Jew run it? Why are these things necessary? Why are those things necessary? Can you explain to me how it adds to the healing? I understand what rocks do. I understand what waters do. I understand what dark does. Like, I'm comfortable with all of those. That brings to healing. But why do you have to have that guy sitting in front of them? What is he doing that someone else can't do? And it was right around that time that I spoke to you, and I spoke to you, and you were coming to the similar conclusion.
It's crazy because when you spoke to me, I was waiting to hear from you. Straight up, I was waiting to hear, like, you know, how can we move? Like what should I do? You know, and I was really happy that, like, we're in the same mindset, and we just connect over a phone call. We just so it was amazing.
No, it's like a message came to both of us at the same time, and I think that's happening. Is yes, you know, you ventured out, I ventured out in different ways, but as we bring it back, especially bring it back within the Frum community, and especially as myself and you get closer and closer to Judaism, right? Because whatever risks we took, it somehow brought us closer to Judaism. So now, for many people, I represent it even more than I did before. Right. Ironically, because I did things that they think might be avodah zarah or something, or something else. But nevertheless, it's still, right? If I move out all the noise, there was still an important message for me that I heard over there to say, no, like, do it in a certain way. I took some risks. Doesn't mean that everyone else has to take the same risks. And is there a way? What is the best way we can do it now in this in this moment, because it is ironic that you can talk about something like Wellbutrin or Paxil, or people go and get it and get drugged every single day. They're taking this medication, and no one asks any questions. It's been totally, there's a doctor there, and you got prescribed.
And nobody reads
any questions.
Nobody's reading the fine lines of what the medicine does to you, like what this type of medicine, all the side effects that it creates.
I'm saying from the frum standpoint.
Right.
There's very little questions.
Right. Yeah. There's no questions.
Right. And suddenly peyote, and people get twisted up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first of all, some of that skepticism is natural and necessary. And then the question always becomes, is there, from all the available choices, is this the best way to do it? And is there one that's even better? And is there one that's even better? And there's one that's even better? And if we can continue finding that, A, it's good to do, and B, it also makes more and more people comfortable to experience this. And if there's anything that is unnecessary or harmful, and how would we know it's in spiritual realms? And good, let's eliminate that, and let's bring people just the
definitely
the goodness.
I agree. I'm always open. People sometimes, like, people that are very close to me, they say, "Wow, how can you hear this criticism? How can you take this? I'm like, everything that needs to be said will be said, and everybody's bringing a message. If we believe that this is God's world, and everything happens for a reason. Nothing happens for no reason, and everything has a meaning, and every little detail of life matters. So even that person that gives a message, even it's a little distorted, maybe the intention is not right, maybe it's skeptical, but there's a message, and there's a message that we need to listen to. And I'm hearing the message loud and clear. I change things up a lot. I used to, in different ceremonies, like different Swad Lodge ceremonies, I used to do. At the beginning it was one way, and then I kept changing, and I'm tweaking it. I'm making it more comfortable. I'm making it more, accessible for everyone, and making it, because that's, at the end of the day, it's like what we take and what we can bring to everyone to make it the best way possible. Yeah, then there is the point where skepticism is going to stay, and it's going to...
Yeah, there's certain people, it's like the role they play.
And that's okay. And you know what? That is okay, because
in the
it's
movie
just
industry, you need critics.
It's keeping us in check. It keeps me in check. I'm okay, it's okay, beseda. So I'm taking it, I'm accepting it. And I'll say there was a part of me that was always having a hard time with it. I was like, no, you have to accept. I'm like, no, it's okay, I don't. It doesn't have to be. There was certain things that we were doing in the community that, like, we were told to stop, like hape, and we were doing hape in synagogue. So, and then I said to my friends, and I said to my close friends, and I said, like, it's not promotion versus attraction. It's attraction versus promotion, and it's not even a promotion. It's just attraction. Just show the way, lead the way, and lead by example, and show the authenticity of everything. And that's what I'm trying to do. There's nothing else, there's not we're all on the same side at the end of the day. And I'm getting very good responses, and, from people that it was hard for them, and they're coming, and they're asking questions. They want to know. And yeah, I'm changing not only in sweat lodges, I'm changing all around, like in different things. Even in ayahuasca ceremonies, we try to change different elements, change different things, because we want to make it as accessible and as for our Jewish roots, and definitely to have everybody included, and to have everybody, feeling what they need, and to heal. So I'm always ready. The King David says, "Mikol melamdai iskalti." He says that from all my teachers I became wise. So I was thinking, like, who's the teachers that he's talking about? And I think he saw everyone in his life as a teacher. Right. So from all my teachers I became wise. So even the ones with the skepticism, even the ones that do not want to accept the way things are, and the ones that don't accept, I will become wise from them, because I will do things maybe and I will.
Oftentimes there's valuable information there.
There's valuable information.
Earlier I asked you how you know if you're healing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess there isn't always one thing, but I'll point out a few things that I'll reflect back to you as signs that you certainly are. So number one, I've heard said that our ability to heal is directly proportional to our ability to accept the truth about ourselves.
Mm.
Right. So, one, truth is very truth is healing, but truth can also break us sometimes. There's too much truth at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Right? It can shatter us. So our ability to continuously accept more and more truth is a very good sign. The second is to be flexible, is to be healthy. It's a sign of health for someone to be flexible, to be able to adapt, to be able to handle things, right? For example, for someone to say, I have a healthy immune system, but I can't be exposed to anything that's even slightly, outside of these this little box, it's obviously not a sign of health. It doesn't mean to fold over from it, but it means to be able to adapt, to be flexible, to hear things. And another is also to see the positive in things. I've thought about anger, like why is anger so toxic? Why is anger? It's not as toxic, why it's considered so unhealthy. It's not only unhealthy, it's considered, I think in Tanya it says it's comparable to Avodah Zarah.
Yeah, Zohar says that too, yeah.
That's comparable to Avodah Zarah, yeah. So it's a very, there aren't enough negative things that can be said about anger. And not the emotion, but the expression of it, certainly. And oftentimes, we get angry, an intruder comes to our house, we're going to get angry, right? That's an appropriate feeling that comes up. But sometimes we stew in anger, and we go back, and we rage, and we lose ourselves in it. And in all of that, I find that what anger often does, if two people are talking, one person gets angry, what is he trying to do? He's trying to stop the flow of the conversation. And oftentimes, anger is used as a way to halt the process, to halt the flow. So when we're not angry at things, when we hear criticism, when we hear others, and we're not trying to halt the flow, but we're willing to move with the flow of life, or as the Baal Shem Tov said, or said in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, that the holiness is to move forward, right? It's energy which is moving. Anger does the opposite of that. Anger often stifles that and stunts that and blocks that.
100%.
So it's a beautiful sign of your own healing that
Thank you.
you're willing to accept truth, speak truth, be flexible, be adaptable, and eliminate anger.
It's hard. I won't say that I'm doing it 100%, but it is something that I'm learning to, like, if I want to change, if I want to unconditionally accept myself, if I want to push away all the negative, all the limiting beliefs, I gotta go with that first, And something about I want to point it out, the importance that I've learned in the Dhamma and one of the processes, and I'm taking this for myself for life. And we did this process where ecstatic dance and Meir shared with this beautiful thing. He says that we move through life with the four elements: water, fire, earth, and air. And it's like, how can we do that? Like, because we're moving through life, and sometimes we have to be flexible, to changes. Sometimes it's Hasidic teachings call it the mayim rabim, like the heavy waters, the strong
waters, yes.
Yes, the tumultuous waters. So, and then sometimes it's fire, and sometimes it's air, and sometimes it's earth, So how can we learn to be flexible through everything that we're going through, through all these turmoils, criticism or anything, and then just accept and just adapt, and just to learn to accept whatever we can, take away what we don't need, and learn to create change and within that. And that's what I was saying about, stepping into from like a point where I'm introduced and I'm taking part, I'm participating in something, and a point where it's being an emissary and being, showing, because the more adaptive change that we create, the more we're able to, just to lead, and the point of the responsibility of leading is bringing it back to, for everybody to have it in a good way. So that's what I'm learning, and I'm humbly accepting, anything. And I learned something very beautiful recently in a session I did at the house with Liat Berko and we, the relationship, intimacy, healing, and I think it's huge. I think it's very important for people to try it. Well, basically, what we got to this process where we picked out hearts from a bowl, and we put these. We chose whatever hearts we wanted. She walked around the room. She gave these hearts out, and I chose the
Paper hearts, crystal hearts. What
it was
kind
like a mush, like a squishy, little hearts, different colors.
like a stuffy.
Yeah, like a stuffy heart. Yeah. So there was, all colors, and for some reason, it's not a color I connect to. I don't wear it. I don't like it. It's yellow. But something told me just take that color, and I'm like, I don't want it. But okay, I have to hold it. Okay, fine, I'll take it. And then after in the process, we spoke about the 10 attributes, the 10 sphirot, and we got to a point where we all connect. She was explaining what it means, each sphera, what color it represents, each attribute, what color it represents, and where the spheres are in our body. So it's like the root chakras, it's similar but different, very different. And I learned that the yellow is Netzach and Hod, which is it's the two sphirot that sit right in the solar plexus, which is right here. And I learned that in my life, I avoided boundaries. So I never had boundaries as a child because I wasn't able to share or express what I'm going through, and there was you can voice your voice because nobody's going to listen.
Right.
Or if somebody's listening, they're not. It's not helping. So, and it's not in a healthy way anyway. So what I learned is that even stepping into this receiving and giving other people knowledge or listening to other criticism is that where do you create a healthy boundary? Because people can say whatever they need to say. At what point do you accept it as healthy criticism? At what point do you take it as something that's like not? It's not conducive. It's like just not. It's not there to serve in any purpose. Like, because there was one person that I felt like I was being bullied by him. Because the intention was just like. Just go
Okay,
more
and
and more, criticize, and there was no,
Understood.
So I decided that basically, we have to listen. Definitely, we have to listen and accept. But then there's a point where we also create a healthy boundary and say like, I'm willing to listen to you, but what's your intent? If your intention is good and we can share a conversation that's beneficial and it's not coming in a dysfunctional way, then no problem. I'm willing to. But if it's coming out of a place of where somebody's projecting onto me their own, things that are completely not helping or completely like toxic in a way, then we're not getting anywhere. But even in that point, I learned recently to even accept that. I was like, oh my God, I have to be even unconditional with that, which is also very hard. And I will share with you something that I think is very important to all this is. In Tzfat, during the summer, there's this festival. It's called the Klezmer. It's a 3-day music festival that happens in Tzfat. It's beautiful. And I'm standing in front of my house. My house is actually a tourist attraction in the old city. It's in the heart of the old city. And
when you say your house, the house you grew up in? The house
I grew up in. And it's still there. We still own it. And we still go back to it. It's a summer house for my family and different times. So I was probably 10 or maybe 11. I'm standing in front of this house on this festival, and a Jewish religious man walks by, and he's very frum in his look, and he even talks the talk, and he walks the walk, and it came to a point where he's standing in front of my house. My house is a tourist attraction, so people know who used to live in that house, and even tour guides would use the house to give a little bit of history. Who used to live there, who he was, and, they make it all, interesting. So this person walks and he looks, and me and my brother, Pinchas, that passed away, we're standing in front of the house, we're selling drinks because it's a very, there's tens of thousands of people walking in the old city. It's very crowded and we want to make a few bucks, whatever. So this guy points at my house and he says, and he tells his buddy, and with no etiquette, with no regard, he says, who used to live in this house? This drug addict that killed himself. So me as a child, I was thrown back by that, and I was very hurt. And it took me up until recently to get over that. To get not over that, also get over the appearance of someone who dresses in a certain way and talks in a certain way too. To be, How
old were you at the time?
I was probably 10 or 11. Yeah. But what I'm trying to share out of this experience is not resentment. What I'm trying to share out of this experience is that I learned to accept that the person that was in that moment, in that situation, and his words were of a person who was in pain. And I actually learned that a lot from you, believe it or not, that you're able to to be with in a certain place and certain people, and you're not even seeing their, like you're pushing past their, you're seeing past their, what they've done. It's like I saw this in one process that we did together with whatever, and I was like, wow, like, to be in that space, to be in that state of mind where you're able to.
Was someone criticizing me? Was someone?
No, it was somebody shared something, and it was a very strong share. It was very hard for me to hear it. I got me all very emotional and very, like, I had to take a smoke in the circle. I was telling Mayor, like, I'm smoking, I have to, and the way you approached this person and what he shared, you were able to, it wasn't like there was no judgment. I felt like there was no judgment in there.
Oh, okay. I think I remember what you're saying.
Yeah. So
he shared a memory of hurting someone else, and
right. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
was able to take that for myself and take that to my memory and to connect it to like, what are you holding on to? Because up until now you're held on to something that's not serving you. You're intoxicated by it. It's not. It's causing dysfunctionality. And what's that person? It's not him. It's his levush. It's his dress, and he's in pain. Whatever he had to say, however he had to say it. Maybe my father crossed him the wrong way. I don't know. Maybe something happened. Maybe whatever. He was just out of place.
Who knows? Yeah.
So I was able to just to let go of that. So it took me many years, and even till today, I'm still. There's things that I'm still working on with that. There was a point, in Simchat Torah that I was asked, oh, come do a l'chaim, and I don't drink. I don't drink, and ever since I actually plant medicine, I don't even look at wine, even, which I used to enjoy just to sip. I don't, and I'm like, it's not serving me. I don't need it, and basically I came to a point to realize that I can hold space for others. They don't have to hold space for me. I can be validating for myself enough. So if somebody comes at me with whatever they want, I can accept. And in the Simchat Torah, I wasn't happy with a lot of things, the way things were happening. And, and especially why am I sharing this? Because there's a part of me I'm still working on. I was able to see how, the drinking, and there's this regular notion of the drinking and all this stuff. And it was hard for me to see it because the healing space offers different types of ways of healing yourself, and this is a way of numbing yourself. So it's like, it's not serving anything, but people are doing it. But today I'm looking at it from a perspective that people are just in pain. I'm accepting the fact that, I'm basically asking myself in that moment, can I accept the fact that they're in pain? And it's so hard for them just to,
there's also, we'll end with this, is that oftentimes when someone approaches the healing world, when they begin healing, then suddenly they're filled with a tremendous amount of judgment for everyone else who's not.
Right.
And they forget that 3 years ago they weren't there. 4 years ago they weren't there. 5, whatever it was, right? Some period of time they weren't there. But suddenly, with every new awareness, there becomes this judgment of everyone else who's not there.
Right.
And that's not a sign of health. That's a sign of the opposite.
You're right, 100%.
Right? And when there's all of that expectation on people and force and everything else, and what you find more and more is that things are happening in a certain time and on a certain schedule that's not ours, and things start to come together in some sort of way that's so misunderstood early on. I mean, I've been on this healing path and somewhat vocal for many years, and it looked like many different things. And people who judge me very heavily at one step of the process, years later, right, it comes around in a different way where there's some benefit I'm able to offer them, specifically because of the fact that I've engaged in the healing, which is something that they judged at a certain point in time, and just seeing how it evolves for everyone in their way, in their time. And, people need to go to a certain depth before they decide enough is enough. Right. But the other side of that is that the depth to which someone goes to before they decide to reverse is is commensurate with how much they can help people.
Right.
Right? Meaning, if they've gone that deep into the darkness, then when someone else is that deep into the darkness, they come back. And I'll say this. There's this, I don't know if I ever shared this on the podcast, but it says somewhere that one is not allowed to sin with the intent of doing tshuva.
Right.
So I had this thought once, why do you have to tell me that? Are you looking at the paradigm of just like strict pleasure that I'm going to go and get pleasure, and then so I'll get a dose of pleasure and then I'll go back and then I'll come back, and then so I'll do it. I'll watch pornography, whatever else. I get the pleasure from it, and the next day I'll do tshuva and everything will be fine. For some reason, I don't think so, because that's to suck out the pleasure of something with all of the other stuff that's attached to it. Mm-hmm. Very quickly we realize it's not a very good deal. Right. Meaning it's a very base level of viewing the world. So for example, you said with plant medicine, after a short period of time, I don't want alcohol anymore. Right? People who step away from pornography or other addictions, they say that the worst punishment would be for them to be back in addiction. Not that if they went back in addiction and lost their relationship or lost their money, just the addiction itself is miserable. It's a miserable existence, right? Who wants to go back to that? So I was thinking that maybe there's a higher level perspective that someone would say, let me sin so that I could return. And what is that? Is that in some way, the deeper we go into the darkness, the more we can elevate, the more we can... And in a practical way, I'm not just saying in some sort of spiritual terminology, but in a very practical way, is we see it. We see people who've suffered tremendously that then go on to become tremendous healers. Right. And your story and the fact that you went through the horror and the trauma of losing a father at a young age, a brother to drug overdose, you're able to help people in ways that I'm unable to, and many others are unable to, because you've been to a level of darkness that not everyone escapes. Like you said, your brother didn't escape it, like you said. Mm-hmm. So someone who does is then able to come back and shine a light that's much brighter than they would be able to carry were it not for those experiences. So someone could think, let me keep going, let me keep going, let me keep going. And then one day I'll turn around and look at the light that I'll bring back with me. So my point is that when we're sitting there and we're watching someone else's journey, and we're saying they should be doing this, they should be doing that. Right. You know, who knows? Right. Who knows to what 100%. Depth one is meant to go before they come back? And the other part of it is, we keep finding our own mistakes through the process. We go here and we go here. We realize that was too far, and we go back. And oftentimes, this whole journey is one of calibration: too far to the right, too far to the left, and that's where we find our balance. So how much do we know about ourselves and how much do we know about others? We don't know, but it's certainly it's certainly not a very healed posture to come from that perspective of others aren't healed, and it's certainly not a very inviting posture. Mm-hmm. And
I could tell you that that expression that I shared with you is a point of resentment, because nothing's perfect and I'm not perfect, but the portrayal that I show is that is I'm accepting everything the way it is. If that's what has to be said, that's how I have to say it. Yeah, sometimes I just get frustrated with it, so I have to share it the way it is. But I want to tell you that, quickly to end with this, is that my brother, when he was going through all his stuff, I was there as a parent. I wasn't there as a brother, like I said, and I was very hard on him. And that taught me that I have to be there no matter what, no matter how, unconditionally accept my brothers and sisters, and unconditionally accept no matter what, through the pain. Yeah, he's shouting at me. Yeah, it's skeptical. Yeah, it's dysfunctional. Yeah, whatever it is. If I have to go back in time, and I would take everything to just hold my brother's hand, and through that one moment of whatever he was, when he's crying and sitting in pain, just to hold his hand with the drugs, with everything, with the blood dripping from his arms for whatever. With all of that, I wish I could just do that. But but I also let go of that because I'm not holding myself, and resent for that. I'm not in shame and guilt for that. I let go of that. And why? Because the way I express it, expresses for me that, like I shared before, Mikol melamdai skalti, and mitalmidai eter mikulam, that King David says that from all my teachers I became wiser, from my students more than anything else. So I say Mikol melamdai skalti vemecha yoter mikulam. From all from everyone from all my teachers I became wiser, from my brothers more than anybody else. And my brother has taught me, like, through that I wasn't able to give, he taught me, like, just accept things. Just accept that it's not accepted for you. Accept that it's hurting you right now. Accept that it's, that you're trying to do something good and it's perceived in a certain way. Accept the judgments, but also learn to not, and even basically you're adding more to it by saying, do not also, like, go back to judging, like, don't judge, just see things for the way they are, and it's definitely attraction, right? It's like you want to attract this healthy, approach to show everyone, like, it's working. It worked for me.
Amen.
Yeah.
May our words touch the hearts of those who are in a similar place to where your brother was. I know that there's a way to a place to come back home to.
Yes, there is.
And can be turned around, and anyone who's gone that far can be a beautiful beacon of light to many people, should they choose to embark on a path of healing. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for coming on here, for sharing your story, for being brave, and for lighting the path for so many others.
Thank you. Appreciate it.